So we'll present this in two phases. First of all, I'll give a little background history about park and recreation impact fees, first as it pertains to the community, and then more specifically how fees and credits have been used over more recent term. The impact fee actually dates back to 1991 when state statute first enabled this as a means for funding new infrastructure within communities. There's a variety of things that impact fees can be used for, including parks and recreation. In 1996 is when City Council first adopted the Park and Recreation Impact Fee for the City of Carmel and Clay Township. And since that date, the only impact fee that the city has ever instituted is for parks and recreation, even though it could use it for other purposes. In 2010 is when the Board of Public Works was granted the authority to grant impact fee credits for certain provisions. That was granted by the council. And then in 2019, because the Park and Recreation Impact Fee has to be renewed every 5 years, the most recent impact fee rate and zone improvement plan, which establishes the rate, was adopted and went into effect on June 1st of 2020. So the Park and Recreation Impact Fee is very much driven by state statute, and how we come and arrive at the dollar amounts and where it can be spent is tied to that state statute and enabling ordinance. The fee is calculated based on a state-mandated state-mandated formula, which takes into consideration the park and infrastructure needs of the community. Based on the current comprehensive master plan, we identified that at $39 million for those projects. It's based on a 10-year projection of new housing units that are going to be constructed or projected to be constructed over a 10-year period. That information is provided to us in cooperation with the Department of Community Services with the city, and that was estimated to be 653 per year. And then what's important to note is that projection actually includes the projected multifamilies, the CRC projects that they anticipate being developed over that time frame. So all these multifamily units that are being constructed, projections for those were included in our zone improvement plan. The fee is then capped based on the current asset value of the park system. So we take a look at the land value of all the parks that Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation owns and or manages, as well as the current asset value of all of those assets. And you divide that by the number of current housing units at the time the zone improvement plan is developed, and that gives you your maximum amount that you could potentially charge. And for us, at the time that we did this in 2019, it was $6,861. So that serves as the baseline, actually the high line, as the most that the fee could potentially be. The fee is then, actually, let me step back. All the revenues that were identified in the zone improvement plan were included in the capital improvement plan, which is incorporated in the comprehensive parks and recreation master plan. Say that a few times fast. And basically we were anticipating about $3.2 million on average annually over the 5-year period of the current zone improvement plan, or almost $16 million. And those were factored into the projects that we were planning to construct, including elements in Bear Creek Park, West Park, and along the White River Corridor. As I mentioned before, the fee is actually established through the zone improvement plan, which must be renewed every 5 years. The current plan is for the years 2020 through 2025, and it was developed in coordination with the Comprehensive Parks and Recreation Master Plan, and is tied directly into the needs and priorities established by the Park Board through that plan. The current fee that is assessed to each unit that is built and for which a permit is issued by the city is $4,882, which at the time that it was established, and I believe maybe to this time, is still the highest park and recreation impact fee in the state of Indiana. The fee is more comparable when you look at other cities that do provide impact fees for road or sanitary infrastructure, but we have, at least at the time we passed this in 2019, to go in effect in 2020, was the highest impact fee dedicated solely to parks and recreation. And the zone improvement plan identifies specifically where those funds that are collected can be used, and as previously mentioned, that's Bear Creek Park, West Park, and White River Corridor. Technically, It was actually referenced as Northwest Park because at the time that the zone improvement plan was prepared, we did not have Bear Creek yet, but the acquisition of that made Bear Creek possible, and that was included in the zone improvement plan. One other thing that's important to note with the zone improvement plan is that it currently includes only the assets that are owned and managed by, or managed by the Carmel Clay Board of Parks and Recreation. But it could include the assets that are not managed by us, but are very reasonably park and recreation assets that the city owns. Things like Brookshire Golf Course or Carter Green, Veterans Memorial Plaza, the grounds around City Hall that include the gazebo, the Japanese Garden, Gray Road Park, which is owned by the city, and other similar amenities. It also could have included new park-related infrastructure identified within the central core. So these projects that for which impact fee credits have been offered could have been included in the zone improvement plan, which would have allowed both the current level as well as the overall fee to both increase, to ensure that instead of money being directed from projects that are planned in the master plan to other projects that are not incorporated in the master plan, it all could have been included. Now, of course, that would have meant a higher fee for developers, but that is permissible under state statute and city code. The actual approval process for the zone improvement plan, which again establishes the impact fee, is first of all, it is drafted by Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation, and like I said, in conjunction with our comprehensive Parks and Recreation master plan. It is prepared in close cooperation with the DOCS, Department of Community Services for the City of Carmel. So it is a joint venture between the park board and the city. It is, as required by state statute, reviewed by an impact fee advisory committee, which can provide feedback on what's included in the zone improvement plan as far as expenditures, the calculation of the fee, and ultimately the fee amount. It then goes to the plan commission, which is required to approve it to be able to move forward. And then from there, it goes to the city council, which has the final say on the zone improvement plan and ultimately the fee. And as was established recently with the Cana Prairie Plan Unit Development and the ordinance that went through for that, neither the Plan Commission or City Council are shy in providing their feedback on plans and legislation that goes through those bodies. So credits in lieu of payments. This is also established and allowed under state statute as well as city ordinance. It does provide the developer the opportunity to finance, construct, and dedicate parks and recreation infrastructure instead of paying all or a portion of the impact fee. And as was previously mentioned, that credit is allowed an amount equal to the sum of either the infrastructure, actual cost of constructing the new infrastructure, as well as the fair market value of the land and property interest. Also, as has been previously mentioned, the Park Board, since the inception of the impact fee law or impact fees here in Carmel, has had the authority to grant impact fee credits for projects that are identified in the zone improvement plan. So, for example, if there was a developer that was willing to construct something in one of the parks, or the example that we used where the Park Board, the only time the Park Board has granted a credit for Albany Village, the development of the greenway that ties into Bear Creek Park. They were received a credit for that instead of us developing it, and then they donated it to the Park Board, which will be accepted here either later this year or early next year. Since December of 2010, the City Council, as previously mentioned, also authorized the Board of Public Works to provide impact fee credits for infrastructure or other improvements that are not included in the zone improvement plan. But it still does have to comply with criteria established within the state statute with regard to where credits can be granted. It has to be for improvements that are beneficial to the community at large and not just the development receiving the credit. It also must be improvement that is a useful addition to the zone improvement plan or reasonably likely to be included in a future zone improvement plan. So looking more specifically at the credits that have been issued by the Board of Public Works for the benefit of CRC-related projects, there have basically been two types of credits that have been issued. One is the credit for infrastructure, similar to what I explained, or in principle, to the Albany Village Impact Fee credit that the Park Board granted, where the developer builds something that is identified in an agreement approved by the Board of Public Works. The value of that infrastructure is negotiated between the Carmel Redevelopment Commission and the developer. And then the developer, in many cases, actually has retained ownership and in theory, operating expenses for those improvements. So then in this case, something is actually built and is supposed to be available for the public to use. The other credit, and I'm going to use quotation marks here because the developer is actually paying the Park and Recreation Impact Fee, but instead of it going to the fund that's designated by city ordinance to the Park and Recreation Impact Fee Fund 106, which is controlled by the Park Board, it goes into a fund that is controlled by the Carmel Redevelopment Commission. So the developer is actually paying currently for new development $4,882 times however many units are in that particular development. The use is typically for funds use. The dollars are within the agreements are basically intended to fund unidentified projects. So we don't know through those agreements approved by the Board of Public Works where the dollars are necessarily going because it's undefined in the agreements that have been approved. But the Board of Public Works has delegated the authority to the CRC director to determine where those funds are used. And one thing that for me is more concerning and something that I think more discussion within the community is merited is that based on a legal opinion which was provided to the Park Board and it's included at your place, it appears to be, based on the information we have today, in violation of state statute and city ordinance. So something that definitely needs to be looked at more closely. So looking at dollars that have been received by either Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation or for CRC related projects since 2013, and I use the year 2013 because that's actually the first year that there's a record of the Board of Public Works actually granting a credit for any projects. The CRC to date through October 31st has received slightly over $6.6 million in cash, the cash credits. They've issued through the Board of Public Works for infrastructure improvements a little over $6.3 million for just shy of $13 million in credits for CRC related projects. Over that same time frame, the Park Board has received a little over $13.9 million in actual impact fee dollars that have been deposited into the 106 fund. We've issued exactly one credit in the amount of $75,560, and I will note that it was not dollar for dollar for those projects. So collectively, the Park Board has benefited from just over $14 million in impact fees. Collectively, the community impact fee value is just shy of $27 million. As has also been mentioned by the individuals that came up and spoke to the board, the Board of Public Works is considering a variety, 5 in total impact fee credits at their meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. It includes just over $4.7 million credit for the PIN 111 project, which we'll talk about a little bit more, as well as proposed cash credits totaling at least $5.5 million, and that dollar amount actually is higher because we don't know how many specific dwelling units are identified in 2 of the projects. So tomorrow, the Board of Public Works will be considering over 10.1, and in reality, probably closer to $11+ million in impact fee credits. What that means, if approved tomorrow, the CRC will have benefited from over $23 million of 37 potential $1 million of impact fee credits since 2013, or over 62% of the total impact fee credits. What's important to note is the Park and Recreation Impact Fee Credit was originally intended to be a funding source for the Park Board, and now it has become a major funding source, more so for the CRC-related projects. So there have been several arguments that have been put out as to why the CRC credits are something that is appropriate. One of them is called the but-for test. This is one where these developments would not have happened otherwise without the CRC's involvement in the projects. Now, but-for is not in state statute as it pertains to park and recreation impact fees or impact fees at all. It is a requirement for the establishment of TIF districts, tax increment finance districts. So it really doesn't apply to parks and recreation impact fees because it's not part of state statute. Second of all, as previously mentioned, the units that the CRC is helping ensure get developed were factored into the projections in our zone improvement plan, but there was no information provided by the city or CRC as to projects that should be considered in the zone improvement plan for that. So, you know, but for, had they given us additional information, we would have been able to incorporate those dollars into the zone improvement plan. The other justification that is frequently used is CCPR is focused outside the central core, or stated another way, the CRC does urban parks, CCPR does suburban parks. So first of all, urban parks and suburban parks are not defined anywhere. They're not in the comprehensive plan for the city of Carmel, which was just adopted in 2022. They are not identified or defined in the Carmel Unified Development Ordinance, which is the means by which the zone improvement plan is incorporated, as well as the fee. And it is not included in our current comprehensive parks and recreation master plan. We do have classifications for parks, including public plazas, but our classifications apply citywide, regardless of what part of the community we're in. Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation, throughout its history, has been involved in projects within what is loosely referred to as the central core. The Monon Greenway was largely developed by Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation. The city was involved in a portion of it around City Hall, from my recollection. But the Monon Greenway, as it was originally developed, was a CCPR project. Also, since it appears that the central core has been expanded to include between Keystone and Meridian, we have Meadowlark Park and we have Central Park, both within that general area. And Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation is in the process of planning and developing the new Chinese garden, which will be located between Carmel Elementary School and the Carmel Clay Public Library. So we're very much have been and continue to be involved in the central core. The lack of involvement, our involvement in phase 1 and 2 of the Monon Boulevard has certainly resulted in some operational challenges for the amenities that have been created. Now, don't get me wrong, the Monon Boulevard is a beautiful asset and a wonderful urban-related park, as is Midtown Plaza. So those are incredible amenities for the community that the city has provided. But there have been some challenges related to them because of the lack of involvement during the design process. Most specifically, you know, we would never have had the playground immediately adjacent to the trail. We've been fortunate that there have been no reported incidents of a kid coming directly off the playground onto the trail that's right adjacent to it, where bikes too often go faster than they should. But we do have reported incidents of a kid that was coming from the street that darted across, that got out of the control of their parents, darted across through a landscape area across the trail to get to the playground. So, you know, we probably would have designed that a little bit different, and we're continuing to look at opportunities to enhance that, but I really don't see very many options because it's a confined space. Also, we all are very aware of the splash pad issues and the additional expenses that are going to relate to that. Those are the bigger issues, but there are some smaller ones as well. Some additional things, as previously mentioned, you know, well, actually, hasn't been previously mentioned, but when the 2005-2010 Zone Improvement Plan, former Director Westermeyer will remember this very vividly, as I do, as a newly hired assistant director. The City Council explicitly prohibited us from including within the Zone Improvement Plan any funding for any amenities within the central portion of the community. Basically, the rationale, as we understood it, was they did not want one dime of impact fees to go into Central Park. So During this time frame, 2005 to 2010, one of our primary funding sources was simply not available for use within the Central Core because of decisions made by previous elected officials. And then more recently, based on numbers I saw in 2022, the city has identified over $61 million of park and recreation infrastructure that it has helped facilitated either through credits or other funding sources well beyond the impact fee that were led either by the city or CRC. So the city has certainly made significant investments within the Central Core, which has been great because all areas of the community need parks. But at the same time, the city, as some of our township officials have indicated, the township has been the primary funding source for our parks outside of Keystone and Meridian Street, and even more recently within that zone. So had the money been shared around, we might have had impact fees to be able to use in more places. So looking more specifically, there have been 27 impact fee credits that have been issued by the Board of Public Works for CRC-related projects. The first one that was recorded was in July of 2013, and it goes on through this current year. And we'll talk about these a little bit more specifically. But as previously mentioned, about $6.6 million in cash credits have been received in the 902 funds or other funds, not the 106 fund, as well as $6.3 million for infrastructure, almost $13 million. Looking more specifically at when the credits have been issued, you can see that we have been having more and more of the credits happening more recently, especially since 2020. And these numbers do not include the over $10.1 million that's being considered tomorrow by the Board of Public Works. So some things that I would ask the community, the Park Board, City Council, Township Board, Township Trustee, and the Mayor to consider as we evaluate the appropriate use of impact fees in the future, as well as general funding for parks and recreation, but more specifically for credits as it pertains to the cash payments that are going to the CRC. I think first and foremost, does this even comply with state statute and city ordinance? Or should the funds have gone to the 106 fund, as the statute appears to say? The second component is what level of public input has been used for design of these projects that have been funded with the impact fee credits. As we all know, Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation prides itself on a very exhaustive public input process to ensure that the products and services, the parks and facilities meet the needs of the community. Doesn't mean that the projects that haven't been funded with it through the city or through the credits don't meet the needs, but they did not necessarily involve public input. So I think it's important to ensure that moving forward that there is that degree of public input that the community is expected from Parks and Recreation, which I also think is why 99% of residents support or are very supportive of Parks, Recreation, and open space in the community. It's because of that public involvement. I think it's important that all credits align with the Comprehensive Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which also involves an extensive amount of public input through statistically valid surveys, online surveys, focus groups with community members and stakeholders, as well as discussions with elected officials. We very much are building our priorities based on the feedback we receive from the community. Additionally, are the funds that are being, for which the dollars directed to the CRC, are they being used for appropriate uses as allowed and defined by state statute, the criteria, if you will? And then was CCPR truly involved throughout the design process and have a say in the actual merit of the projects in the first place? There have been occasions both for the credits, but more so for the actual developments where they've asked me my opinions, but it's already been effectively approved. I'm just able to give feedback on some of the things, but not really truly involved in the design process. So looking more specifically at the cash credits that the CRC has benefited from, there have been 16 of those, and you can see that the dollar amounts, on the low side around $62,000, but on upwards over the first through beginning of 2022, around 700 was the high side. And now, in September, there was one of $1.8 million approved. In total, like I said, $6.6 million, and this does not include what's on the agenda for tomorrow. Looking at how these funds have been used has been a little bit challenging. The funds are supposed to be directed in to the Fund 902, which is controlled by the CRC. And since December of 2019 has been deposited or supposed to be deposited into the cash account 1143. Looking through the financial records of the city through the end of October, we know that $30,179 and some change has been towards the interurban trailhead project, and there was almost $2 million that was directed to the Kaleidoscope, which is the projection show on the Palladium. What is also of note is that originally it was proposed that one of the bonds that was issued by the city, some of those funds be used for the Kaleidoscope project. City Council was not particularly fond of that, so instead of using bond dollars, they used impact fee dollars. Not saying that the Kaleidoscope isn't an incredible asset for the community, but the question is it really a park and recreation infrastructure? And I guess that's for the community leaders to decide. I also should note that the CRC, through agreements with the Park Board, is funding $232,350 for the interurban trailhead project. That is the design of the trailhead as well as the new signage, seat walls that will be at the trailhead. That was an existing amenity, so under state statute, if they're using impact fees can only be used for new development. They cannot be used for renovations. And arguably, if they're using this for impact fees for that project, it's in violation of state statute. I should note that the CRC has indicated that the rail yard credits, the apartment complex along Monon Boulevard, a little over $500,000 that was used towards Monon Boulevard improvements. Again, incredible assets. So, but that's not tracked anywhere in 1143. So, I'm sure there's additional fundings. I'm sure that CRC can provide greater details. But based on what's easily available, looking through the financial records, this is what I've been able to identify. So now let's shift to, instead of the cash credits, to the actual projects that were developed using impact fee credits approved by the Board of Public Works. And again, I have some questions for the community, not only for the past projects, which are past. I mean, they've already been done, but more importantly for the community to consider moving forward is, again, what level of public input was used to determine the design for the projects that were funded with the credits? Do the projects, again, align with the Comprehensive Parks and Recreation Master Plan? Were we involved throughout the design process and have a true say in the merits of the project? Would the developers have provided recreation amenities anyway to attract new residents to their development, or otherwise would those improvements been required by the city? And that's actually one of the criteria associated with state statute. Is the public space available for all members of the public to use? And did the credits provide benefit to more than just that specific development? I retract my previous statement. This is the one I meant to say is specifically within state statute. And then, more importantly, there's a difference between being available to the public and does the public perceive it as being available to them? Does it feel like it's an amenity that's solely for that development for their residents to use? Or is it a place that the community at large truly feels like they can use? And then, once it's built, what process exists to ensure that the amenities that were identified in the agreement are actually constructed to the specifications? So looking at each of the projects that have been approved, the first one was the common space that you see sort of on the left side of the photo for the MES, which is located along the Monon Greenway just on the east side of the Tarkington by the Center for the Performing Arts. The structure you see in the corner is the parking garage there. So basically paid for pavers, benches, landscaping in this particular area. Using a point of comparison, and I'll use this for the other projects as well where feasible, Cary Grove Park, which is one of our smallest parks, a little over 5 acres. You can see that sort of in the square on the left. Midtown Plaza, which I think is an incredible public plaza, public park space. Part of the power of Midtown Plaza is its connectivity to the Monon Boulevard and Monon Greenway, so it feels part of something larger, not just for the immediately adjacent developments. And then you have the mezz on the right, which you can kind of see in blue. And then just to superimpose that roughly 5,000 square foot space on Cary Grove and Midtown, it wouldn't even occupy the playground at Cary Grove, and it would occupy a little under half of Midtown Plaza. The Seasons was the next one, which occurred in 2014, $417,000, almost $418,000 for amenities, including a crosswalk, which you see here at the 98th Street alignment across Westfield Boulevard, a perimeter path that goes from 96th to 98th Street. Developers are required to provide perimeter paths for new development. This was actually provided south of the new development as part of the impact fee, so it was an area that was pre-existing within the community. And then a trail, 98th Street trail that goes from Westfield into Woodbriar Lane. 98th Street doesn't go all the way through, so there's portions of this that are actually a trail, and then some of the landscaping around there. To give an orientation as to where this is, the roundabout is 96th Street roundabout. Immediately to the sort of the 10 o'clock orientation is Lenape Trace Park, but you can see the perimeter trails, the 98th Street Trail, and the crosswalk. The value of this particular infrastructure is that it does tie into the perimeter trails along Westfield Boulevard, which ties into the trail connection from Lenape to the Monon Greenway, as well as the perimeter trails that go through Sunrise on the Monon, which is to the west of this development, into Henshaw Park, and again to the Monon Greenway. So at least this does provide and extend trail connectivity to one of the older residents in the southern portion of the community. Next, staying in the same part of town, Sunrise on the Monon, which was approved through 2 resolutions, one for the actual homes and the other one for the apartments. About $820,000 for construction of a park, as well as donation of just under 2 acres. The amenities included the shelter bridge, windmill, asphalt trail, and landscaping within the park. In this particular one, the value of it is immediately adjacent to the Monon Greenway. It also is immediately adjacent to the Vera J. Henshaw Nature Preserve, which was previously donated by the Henshaw family before the Old Town development occurred. So it does become something part of something larger. It does feel a little bit like an HOA property, but it does have a little bit more connectivity to natural areas. The developer built it, the park board owns it, but the HOA in perpetuity is responsible for maintaining it. So it's not necessarily a complete bad deal. And then again, comparing it to Cary Grove, it is about 1/3 the size of Cary Grove. The proscenium was approved through 2 different resolutions on the same date, $650,000 plus for the raised planter, seat wall, bike racks, paver, concrete, and landscaping that's next to Wahlburgers. In this particular case, it's also important to note that it's not the entire green space, which is largely used as a place for dogs to relieve themselves. A big quarter of it has already been approved for a restaurant, coffee shop, so not all that space is actually part of the public space. The space that is available is about the same size as Midtown, but not sure that the public would identify this as a place that everyone is welcome. There's probably a lot of people that don't even know it's there. In 2021 for Melange, this is the The condos that are across from the fire station north of City Hall, immediately adjacent to the Monon Greenway, about $169,000 for pavers, fountain, and landscaping, in a area that is very much in the middle of the complex. It's still under construction. It's about 7,000 square feet, so again, not as large as Midtown, about 5,000 square feet smaller than that, but in an area that feels very much part of that development and the green space that you would probably need to provide just to make it attractive. One of the largest impact fee credits that has been granted was to the north end, which is north of Smoky Row. It was almost $1.4 million for construction of amenities provided by the developer, as well as a over $62,000 cash payment to the CRC. This one's a little bit harder to identify what is transpiring because it's a project that's still very much under construction. But it includes a urban farm, as well as a donation of that property to a not-for-profit. The urban farm has a cool concept that it's working with people with disabilities and helping provide a life skill. So there's definitely a cool component to that. It's also supposed to include a trail connection to the Monon Greenway on the northern end, playground and outdoor exercise equipment, path extension through the urban farm, as well as extension of the Hagenberg Trail, and donation of what's identified as Monon Park. Looking more specifically at it, the urban farm is about 5.4 acres. The Monon Park, which hasn't been donated, is just under 0.9 acres. There is not yet any connection to the Monon Greenway, and based on the development plans, I don't believe there's going to be an extension of the Hagenberg through this development. The signature, which was also approved in 21, 201,000 plus for amenities, plus almost $700,000 cash payment to the CRC. This includes two separate areas. This amenity is at Main and Old Meridian. It includes amenities on the southwest and northeast side of the property, but the concrete pavers, stone walls and bands, public art, and landscaping. To put that in perspective, they're on, like I said, separated areas. It's not even all the areas along the street, around 8,400 square feet. So that would make up about the playground of Cary Grove and a little bit of Midtown, but areas that don't feel very much like a park. The corner, which we've discussed previously, was approved through actually two resolutions. One of them approved on November 1st. $542,714 for developer constructed amenities, and up to $317,676 cash payment to CRC. The reason I say now up to, they ended up constructing 9 additional units than was originally approved. So the Board of Public Works earlier this month approved an additional impact fee credit to ensure all of those dollars went to the CRC. The amenities that were included as part of this project were the interurban trail connection, which the Park Board has been involved in those discussions. The perimeter pass along 116th Street and Westfield Boulevard, which should have been provided by the developer anyway. Landscaping, and then a public gathering and outdoor work area, which is this area here. To note the sort of chunked out area, that's the sewer lift station. So again, seeing that space and superimposing it on our benchmarks. As I mentioned, they are funding about $232,000 for the renovation of the trailhead. It'll be a nice addition. It'll make it look nice, but I think it's questionable whether impact fee funds should be used, since it is truly a renovation and not a new amenity. First on Main, which was approved in 2022, $483,318 for construction of amenities, and includes the foundation for the return of the rotary clock that used to be at this corner, The concrete between the buildings, and so in other words, sidewalks, the pavers and benches, and some planters and landscaping. This, I don't see how anyone would confuse as a park. And you can see the spaces and how it looks. Proscenium 2, because Proscenium 1 wasn't enough. $268,510 for amenities. This is being constructed on the old Walgreens site immediately north of Kroger. It has a dog excrement area, sidewalk extension, seat walls and benches, decorative lights and planters. The space is literally between the building and the street, so you can see not super huge. And again, how it compares to our benchmarks. A project that wasn't super popular by at least the immediate adjacent neighbors, almost $1.2 million for developer amenities, including pavers and concrete, planter, seat walls, landscaping, lighting, artwork, structure, and another area for dogs to go pee and poop. And how it compares. And then finally, the concourse, which is a new building that's being constructed immediately south of the water tower adjacent to Monon Boulevard, a little over $483,000 for foundation, deck, and utilities for the miniature museum, synthetic turf lawn in the linear area, landscaping, crosswalks, and lighting. You can see the site. It looks like they've actually started moving dirt on that and how it compares. So again, looking at the credits and the impact fees that, whether it's dollars or credits that the CRC or CCPR have received, you can see during the early years, really through, you can almost extend it to 2019, the lion's share of the impact fees were still coming to the Board of Parks and Recreation. At most, about 40% in 2018 went to CRC. A few years, all the money went to the Park Board. Beginning in 2020, at least 62% has been going to the CRC, and in those years, it's when the CRC started getting more every year of impact fees, either through credits or dollars, than what the Park Board has been receiving. So that takes us to the item that we're requesting the Park Board consider tonight, which is Resolution G 2023-005. This is to address not necessarily what's transpired in the past, but what's being proposed for the future. As mentioned, 5 impact fee credits and credits are being proposed for consideration by the Board of Public Works tomorrow. Pin 111, which is at 111th and Penn Street, which is at least true development of something, $4.7 million, and the balance of it for cash going to the CRC. Hamilton Crossing, which used to be a strip mall, it's just identified as $4,882 per unit without the number of units identified. And same thing for Midtown Blocks 4 and 5, which is south of Elm Street along Range Line. So we don't know exactly the dollar amount, but it's probably safe to assume it's at least $1 million. Looking specifically at Pin 111, which was originally proposed on November 1st and tabled and has resurfaced for the 15th, $4,706,248, which is more money than what we've received in multiple years of impact fees. This is something that is Pin 111, literally in the center of the development, which is predominantly apartments, but does have businesses included in it. The space is about 24,410, so it's comparable to Midtown Plaza. What it includes: water fountain, bocce ball court, fire pit and seating, a stage that will also include a large screen similar to what is in Midtown. It includes the seating for the amphitheater for the concerts that are, I'm presumed, for the place. some recreational amenities, more benches, a swing installation, restrooms in an adjacent building, the artwork in the center roundabout of the complex, pickleball courts, two, and a small playground. Based on staff's assessment of it, this development is located within 10-minute walk of Central Park, so it's certainly not one of the areas of the community lacking for parks and recreation. There's no particular strong connection for the proposed amenities within the current comprehensive master plan. In reviewing the statistically valid survey that we conducted this year for the new comprehensive master plan, none of the amenities are identified as the highest priorities. There are some identified need for these. Pickleball, I would certainly say, is something that the community wants more of, but it's not the highest scoring things on the survey. We do have noise concerns about some of the proposed things. The pickleball courts, the standards are that you should be at least 500 feet from the closest residence, and it's pretty much immediately adjacent to a number of residents. We were very fortunate in Meadowlark Park that the the apartment complex that's next to our pickleball court has 0 windows on its side because it's closer than what we would do for any of our future parks based on information we have today. But we also have a vegetative buffer between it, and we added the sound baffles on it. And when you're on the other side of the pickleball courts, you can't hear it. So in this case, it's really close, and if there's any windows facing that way, it's going to create challenges. Additionally, the entertainment venue is completely surrounded by residences. So if there's any late night activities there, even going into 8, 9, 10 o'clock, there could be some concerns for the adjacent residents. The location of the pickleball courts and playground, they're way away, they're not interconnected with the public space. They're surrounded by the residences, so they certainly don't give the appearance of being for the community at large. The double-seated swing that was proposed, it looks cool. Obviously, these are conceptual, so it's not the final product. But from a safety perspective, I would have concerns about the potential for kids getting their fingers interconnected underneath it, pinch or entrapment issues there. So it might be fine, but there's certainly not enough detail to truly make an assessment. And then the center of roundabouts are not parks. They are incredible spaces. They contribute to the beauty of the community. They are wonderful spaces, but they aren't parks, and I would argue are not appropriate uses of impact fee funds. For all the projects, I don't want to say that the projects themselves are bad. I think all of them actually did contribute to the beauty of the projects. The question is, should park and recreation impact fees have been used to help subsidize them or build them? So again, using those things to consider that I previously mentioned, what level of public input for the recreational amenities? To the best of my knowledge, none. Do the projects align with the current comprehensive parks and recreation master plan? There's not a strong alignment. Were we involved throughout the process? No. The developers have provided recreation amenities anyway to attract the residents. I think arguably yes to at least some degree. Is the public space available for all members of the public to use? There might be an argument that the public plaza is if the businesses around there ultimately become successful. But I would argue that the pickleball courts and playground are very questionable as to whether it's truly a benefit for more than just that development. And will the public perceive it? Pretty much ditto. I don't think the public will perceive at least part of those spaces as being for the public. And, you know, obviously until it's built, we don't know if they've fulfilled the agreement. So, as I mentioned, you know, the impact of impact fees and the dollars that are going to the different entities or benefiting the different entities has been snowballing in favor of the CRC recently. So we talked about, these are repeat numbers, since 2023, just under $13 million to the CRC, just over $14 million to parks. What's proposed, as mentioned, over $10.1 million. We don't know the exact dollar amount because of the projects that are undefined. So over $23 million since 2013 going to CRC, and through the end of October, $14 million coming to parks since 2013. That means 62.3%, not including those two projects for which we don't know exactly how much they are, since 2013 has been benefiting the CRC and not parks. Now, let's look at since 2020, because that's when it really started snowballing. You know, all but $2 million of the impact fee credits that have been approved so far have been since 2020. In that time frame, we received a little shy of $5 million. Again, the 10.1 million plus. So over $21 million, presuming everything is approved tomorrow, going to benefit CRC-related projects. And again, just under $5 million so far through the end of October coming to parks. That will mean that over 81% of the impact fees, which were originally instituted by the community for the benefit of parks, is now benefiting the CRC. It is no longer a parks funding source. It is the CRC funding source. So what's being proposed in the resolution tonight, which was distributed to the park board last night for your review, has been reviewed by legal counsel as well, is a variety of whereas clauses, because that's what all resolutions have. But the statements that are being made is that, one, and I'll read this for the public record, the board affirms its commitment to provide park and recreation infrastructure throughout the city of Carmel and Clay Township. The board is the only governing unit, not unity, within the city and township dedicated solely to serving the park and recreation needs of the community. Development of park and recreation infrastructure is prioritized by the board based on the comprehensive Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which is developed with extensive community input. The Zone Improvement Plan, which establishes a community level of service, estimates the cost and revenue sources to maintain the community level of service, and establishes the infrastructure eligible for use of impact fees, is developed based on the comprehensive Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Impact fees are a critical component of the board's funding strategy for new park and recreation infrastructure necessary to serve the increased demand on the park system resulting from new residents moving into the community. Impact fee credits should only be provided for park and recreation infrastructure that aligns with the priorities and goals of the comprehensive Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Impact fee credits should not be provided to fund construction of projects that would otherwise be provided by the developer to attract residents or businesses to the development, and or will not be perceived by the public as a park as defined by the Comprehensive Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Projects receiving impact fee credits should have a site master plan that incorporates public input gathered from at least 2 public meetings facilitated in coordination with and consistent with the planning practices used by the board. Cost estimates used for the basis of impact fee credits should be independently reviewed and validated by a consultant selected by the board. And this also includes, or is intended to include, ensuring that what is actually built equals the amount of the credit, at least. And infrastructure developed with impact fee credits should be bonded and inspected to ensure all committed infrastructure is developed and built to the specifications approved in the agreement. And to ensure the transparency for the public, the Carmel Unified Development Ordinance should be amended, requiring all future impact fee credits to be approved with, first, the consent and acceptance of the board, and upon the adoption of a resolution of the Common Council approving the infrastructure and the amount and terms of any impact fee credit granted. The intent is not necessarily to avoid the provision of credits, because there are examples of good credits. The intent is to ensure that the public understands what these dollars are going for and that it is based on public input. And as a park system, we move really quickly. Most park systems are not able to develop and create things as quickly as we do, despite the fact that we have a robust public input process, one that is nationally recognized and one which helped us win 2 national gold medal awards and is one of the paramounts of accreditation. And then finally, of these statements, all impact fee credits paid by the developer and receipted by the city into a fund other than the Park Impact Fee Fund 106 should be reimbursed to Park Impact Fee Fund 106 in compliance with the Carmel Unified Development Ordinance, Section 1.30, subsection K. Furthermore, in light of the 5 proposed impact fee credits totaling in excess of $10.1 million on the November 15, 2023 agenda for the Board of Public Works, the board requests all proposed impact fee credits currently under consideration or anticipated to be considered by the Board of Public Works through the end of the year, December 31, 2023, be deferred to give the incoming administration and newly elected Common Council an opportunity to review the merit and appropriateness of proposed credits. With that, I'd be happy to address any questions the Park Board may have.
Questions for Michael? Mark?
I could go on for hours.
You know
However,
the history as every bit as I do.